Is Paweł Kubik, and I am a full-stack developer at Cilio. And today I will talk briefly about testing in Ember and how to improve it. And that's it. Let's start with the agenda. So on the beginning I will talk about why we should test and why this is so important. Next, a quick reminder about classification of Ember test, and then I will show you some features that have arrived to Ember ecosystem and some powerful add-ons that for sure will improve your test. So why do we test? There is a lot of reason, but for me the most important reason is the fact that we don't want our application to crash or to have a lot of bugs that can upset our end users. We as developers want our application, our client to be successful. And writing tests can help us to achieve that. The other important reason is that the tests are living documentation, and we will write better code, and there is less need for manual QA, and of course confidence when refactoring and updating stuff. And we all know that the world in JS and in Ember change really fast, and we should be up to date with all package and other stuffs to be successful. So quick reminder about uh, four levels of testing in Ember. Right now we have from Ember 3.0 we have 4 levels of testing, but for me the classification looks like this, where we have unit and container test, then the majority of rendering, previously integration test, and then the slowest one, the application acceptance test, in which we are testing user behavior, interaction, and application flow. In rendering test, as the name suggests, are rendering components. In most cases, we just need to render component, then click on something, and then just check the assertion. And the container tests are ideal for testing controllers, routes, and services, where you can look up for the item we want to test, and then just apply some action onto it, and then test it results. And the container tests are basic. They are just utils function mixing or computed properties. So let's go to our main stuff for today, the features and add-ons that will improve our test. Firstly, I wanted to talk about testing asynchronous code, because testing asynchronous code was always a bit tricky. I suspect that a large part of us today know this syntax with and then, and probably a lot of applications have tests written in this style, but the and then implementation is older than the promise one, and we don't need to use it anymore. So maybe we can use promise instead, but this makes our more obvious that we are dealing with asynchronous code, but it makes also it a little harder to read, and we don't need to use that also, because we have awesome async await syntax, and which looks like this, where we have await keyword before the asynchronous helper from Ember Test Helper package, and await keyword can be used only inside async function, and the assertion will be executed after the await will be finished. So it really makes this test simpler to read and to understand. And I mentioned before Ember Test Helpers. This is a package which exports several helpers function that can be used to improve the testing experience, like fill in, click, visit, render, and we don't need to use jQuery anymore. Another cool feature is modules and nested modules. From Ember QUnit 4.20, we can nest modules and have multiple before each, after each, that run in a sequence. And I think that is quite similar to race context. And as you can see on the slide, we have two modules inside one global module, one for small screen and one for big screen. We have separate hooks for each module and the test. And nested modules can help a lot to clean up some shared setup steps, as we can see, and also they are a great tool for grouping similar tests together, because we can have a lot of tests related to, I don't know, label property, and very often they were in different place in one file, and it was hard to developer to find all these tests related to label property. But with modules we can just create module name label and put there everything related to label property. Another one is Ember CLI page object, and one of the problem with acceptance and integration test is that many of CSS selectors is used to look up elements are repeated across tests, and in some cases this repetition seems like smell. And to avoid that, we have page object pattern. The main idea behind the page object pattern is to encapsulate in an object the page or component that we want to test, and hides the details of its HTML structure and exposing only semantic structure of the page. As you can see on this slide, we have also a lot of CSS selectors here and method like this, and it makes the test harder to read. And that is our test with page object. We have page, we visit the page and then fill in all fields and mark as new, and then we are adding book, and in the end we are testing if added book is the same as we just added. And this is much more readable than the previous example. And yeah, this is our page object. It's really pretty simple. We just import some helpers from this package, and then we have our page. To sum up, the page object design pattern is a powerful one for writing reusable, more readable, and easy to understand test. And just quick info: to use page object with nested modules, we need to use page object version 1.15.0 beta 1. And another one are test selector. As you probably saw on my previous slides, I use a lot of selectors based on CSS classes like here. And but what will happen when we change the this book class, for example, to item? The test will fail, and but our business logic is the same, and this visual change shouldn't affect our test at all. We can use data attributes from HTML5, And with Ember test selector or package, we can pass data test to our component and to our div. And then in test, we can just find something by this selector. And the package, the Ember test selectors, also remove attributes starting with data test from production build. So we don't need to worry about that. And of course, we can use test selector with page objects. Yeah, QUnit DOM is another cool package which can help us to make tests much more readable. In our assertion, now we just check if this element has this text, and it is much more readable than the sum of annoyed QUnit assertion, and we can use page QUnit DOM with page object, and there is also a lot of others assertion. You can check them on the GitHub QUnit DOM repository. Another one is Ember CLI code coverage. Probably do you wonder sometimes how much of your code is being tested? And with this add-on, you can check this really easy by running your test suite with coverage equal true flag. And after your test will be executed, the report will be stored in coverage folder, and you will be able to see how much of your code is tested, divided into statements, branches, functions, and lines. And you can see each file to see which fragment of your code is not tested. As we can see here, the else block is not tested. And the last for today is Ember Exam. And as you know, more tests in our application increase time of running your test, especially when we have a lot of application acceptance tests. But you can use Ember Exam to speed up running your test suite. With this one line, which split our test suite into 3 equal groups with parallel option, it means that it will use 3 different browsers instant for each group of tests. My tests in my application were executed 2.7 times faster, from 270 seconds to 100 seconds. And Ember Exam can also help you find brutal order-dependent tests, the kind that sometimes fails and sometimes pass. We just need to run tests with random flag. And that's all for me. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer all your questions, and you can find me here.